Welcome. It's wonderful that you are joining us today. It's often said that when we can't dream any longer, we die, or a person starts dying when they stop dreaming. And my two guests today have a wealth of insight to share about both dreams and the afterlife. Joining us today are Julie Beischel and her partner in life and work, Mark Boccuzzi. Julie Beischel, Ph.D, is co-founder and director of research at the Windbridge Research Center, a public charity dedicated to easing suffering around dying, death, and what comes next. Her main research includes spontaneous, facilitated, assisted, and requested afterlife communication experiences. Her partner, Mark, is a researcher, activist, artist, educator, and developer, working at the intersection of technology on social change and consciousness research. His goal is to normalize afterlife communication in order to create a more compassionate, sustainable, and interconnected world. Hello, you two. Long introduction, but you deserve it.
Hi, Theresa.
Thanks for having us.
I have followed your extraordinary research almost from the start, and I am in complete awe of you both. But for people who are new to Julie and Mark, the whirlwind that is Julie and Mark and all the pioneering research and work they do, would you mind, whoever wants to start, to share your story?
As Theresa said, we work at the Windbridge Research Center, and our mission is to alleviate suffering around dying, death, and what comes next. So we do that through rigorous peer-reviewed scientific research and providing free educational materials for people based on that research.
Yep. Sorry. Do you want to talk a little bit about your history, how you got started in this field?
I would love your story. I mean, it's not something that's very usual. You know, you wake up one morning and I'm going to start a center about afterlife research and afterlife dreams and all that. I'd love to know how you fell into it. And then Mark, please, I'd love to know how and why you support this research.
When I was in graduate school getting my degree in pharmacology and toxicology with a microbiology and immunology minor, so not anything to do with any of this, I lost my mom to suicide. And so I started to wonder, what do we know? What does science know about what happens after we die? And I looked into it, and through a myriad of crazy synchronicities, I ended up doing a postdoctoral fellowship in studying mediums, individuals who experience regular communication with the deceased. So for about 20 years, I've been studying mediums and other forms of after-death communication. And when we met, do you want to tell the story of how we met?
Sure. So I've had a long time interest in all things paranormal, although I don't particularly like that word. And I ended up, I considered a career in parapsychology at some point, but decided to go into computer science instead. But I always kept my interest alive through study and research and reading. And in 2005, I had the opportunity to attend a summer study program in parapsychology that was put on by the Rhine Research Center at the Institute of Noetic Sciences campus in Northern California. I was living in California at the time, so I took 2 weeks off, non-paid vacation, and I went and I threw myself into this program. And my interest had primarily been around survival, mostly studying spontaneous reports of after-death communication experiences in the field, like ghosts and hauntings, things like that. And when I got to this summer study program, there were very few people that were actually interested in what we call postmortem survival or afterlife topics, and one of them was Julie. And so we started talking a little bit, but we didn't really know each other. And at some point during the 2-week program, not too far into the 2-week program, Dean Radin, who's the researcher that was running the lab, said, would you like to participate in a demonstration experiment so you can understand a phenomenon known as remote staring? A remote staring is when you get two people and you separate them physically in space and you separate them so there's no information transfer between the two of them. Yet when one person looks at the other one,
on camera.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks. When one person looks at the other one, there's the person being stared at has a physiological response. So the way this is set up is two people are in very isolated rooms and there's no information transfer between them, except one person has a camera in front of them. In this case, that was Julie, sitting quietly in a room with a camera, and I'm sitting in a different room with a monitor that turns on and off at random times so I can see Julie. And my task is to get Julie's attention by raising my physiology, getting excited, waving, speaking out loud, etc. So we did that, and it was actually a really intense experience, and we got out of it, and the two of us were like, hi, how are you? It was like the most awkward first date you could ever imagine. And so while Dean was looking at the data, and we had some interesting results in the data, Julie and I were like, well, who are you and what do you do? And so we sort of started this relationship, both first professionally, and then Dean later tells us, well, you know, the random sequence where you could see Julie and not see Julie doing the experiment, that was actually Morse code for the word love. So this was part of a love study that Dean was doing. And 3 years later, we got married. So that's how we met.
So there was data that he was the right one, because my physiology I was isolated in a room with a camera. And when he was trying to get my attention, my physiology was reacting in a different room. So that's hard to deny that there's something there.
So after Julie finished her postdoc, she was still interested in conducting research around mediumship. So I wouldn't say the easiest, but the next logical path that presented itself to us was for us to start our own organization, which was originally the Windbridge Institute and is now morphed into the Windbridge Research Center, which is a public charity where we conduct research and provide educational materials around dying, death, and what comes next.
Absolutely. And now your research supports a continuing bonds model to explain and to help the grief process. And how do afterlife communications, in particular afterlife dreams, this is a DreamWorks summit, fit into this model and your research?
So the continuing bonds model is used to describe grief, and what it involves is the person, the griever, the bereaved, recognizing that though the relationship has changed, it hasn't ended. So you continue your bond that you developed when the person was in the physical, and your relationship is just one that is now spiritual, not physical. So that's the continuing bonds model. So people that have what's called after-death communication experiences, or ADCs, that is very demonstrative of that your relationship has continued, because you're receiving contact and having experiences of the continued relationship. And that includes all kinds of things: signs, visual sensations, hearing voices, feeling touched. The two biggest cases of experiences of after-death communication are a sense of presence, just feeling like the person is sort of in the room with you, and dreams. And we call them visitation dreams. So people have a lot of dreams about the deceased, and these visitation dreams are remarkably different than a regular dream about someone. They're far more vivid. You will remember them when, with regular dreams, REM dreams, you often forget them a few minutes after you wake up, but these you hold on to for sometimes years. And some researchers in our field have said we should really not call them dream ADCs. We should call them sleep ADCs, because they're really not like regular dreams that we're used to. They're so much more vivid and so much more powerful.
So you're saying in the research that when people come to you, you ask them about their dreams, or that they tell you about your dream? I'm just trying to understand how you gather this research. Is it through questionnaires, surveys? How does it happen?
Yeah, there have been countless surveys asking people about their dreams since the 1880s. It was one of the things originally that researchers interested in survival of consciousness after death were interested in, was how are people interacting with the deceased. And so ever since then, people have been researching it all over the world through surveys, and then asking people to sometimes in the studies, asking people to describe their experiences.
Yeah, in our research, we've run at least one study now looking at asking people to report stories about their after-death communication experiences. And what we found from those data was that nearly 90% of the people that responded to our survey reported some sort of dream interaction. And we're doing this because we're interested not only in how people perceive their deceased loved ones in dreams, but we're also finding another interesting correlate, which is people are reporting dreams about their deceased companion animals. So that seems to be another piece of this as well, that people's, I don't like to use the word pets, but that's a common term, people's pets or animals that they live with or part of their household also seem to be coming through in these very vivid ADC dream experiences.
That makes perfect sense to me, because for a lot of people, their pet is sometimes the love of their life, and there's nothing wrong with that. Love is love, isn't it? And they still sense them around and their appearance in dreams. I'd love to just go back to what you said about how you can tell if it's a visitation dream. I mean, is any dream you have of someone who's departed a potential afterlife sign that death ends a life, not a relationship? Or is there something specific people need to look out for?
It's very clear when you've had when the dream is a visitation dream versus you just dreaming about the person. I can tell a story about my own experience. After my mom died, I was having a dream and doing whatever, regular dream thing I was doing. And my mom walked in the room. And I had had other dreams about her before. Like I said, she died of suicide. And so I had lots of dreams. It wouldn't take Freud to interpret, oh no, please don't pack your bags and go on vacation. They were very clearly just me coping with the death. But this dream, when she walked in the room, I was surprised to see her. And I thought, oh my, that's my mom, and she died. And she approached me. And she leaned in to kiss me, and the closer she got, I got more and more scared, and I woke myself up before she kissed me. So I think we're really concerned with teaching people about these experiences so that when it happens, you expect it and that you aren't scared like I was, because I didn't know anything about after-death communication or mediums or anything at the time. So it just was totally foreign to me. I'd never heard anything about it. But if I had learned about it, I wouldn't have been scared, and I could have had a conversation with her, experienced whatever she wanted to share with me. And that's another piece, is that they don't always talk. So sometimes you just have the conveyance of ideas non-verbally. But they're so different. Like I said, I had lots of dreams about my mom before, and it was so different and so real. And so it won't take, you won't have to try very hard to determine if it's a visitation dream or you're just dreaming about the person. It's very, very different, sort of experientially, qualitatively.
So you wake up with a sense that you really have somehow on a soul level connected with a departed loved one. The question is, are these experiences helpful or not so helpful with the grieving process? Does it lead to people wanting more? I'd love to know your thoughts on that, and what research is saying about how helpful visitation dreams are for the grieving process.
After-death communication experiences of any kind are most often helpful for the bereaved, because it does demonstrate that continuing bond, and you now know you still have a relationship with the person. There are negative experiences, and the researchers who have looked into this have understood it as that's usually when someone doesn't understand, right? When I had that experience, I was scared. And so you could maybe consider that negative. But if you understand it and it isn't scary because you have knowledge about it, then it lessens the possibility of a negative experience. The other thing that can make something negative is when you try and tell someone about it, and then they oh no, that's just a dream. that or the social stigma of like, no, you're crazy because you talk to dead people. That's not, there's the evidence is it's not pathological. It's a very common experience that have been reported on every continent in the world since the beginning of time. As long as there were people and they were dying and other people loved them, people have reported experiencing after-death communication experiences.
Did you find that with the pandemic, of course, with death on the headlines, tragically every single day, that more and more reports of dreaming, of visitation dreams? Did you find that coming into your research center?
We didn't collect data around that specifically. For us, there's this really fine line that we try to walk, right? We're dealing with people, a population that's grieving. And so we always try to find this balance between, we're collecting data and we're doing research versus what maybe end up being exploitive towards a grieving population. And that's a really difficult line to walk a lot of times. So we didn't do any specific research around this. My mom passed away in early 2020, in March of 2020, and it was right after we'd gone into lockdown. And my mom was older, and she was already suffering from symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's. And so her passing wasn't a surprise, but it was very quick. We had thought she was going to hang around for a little bit longer than she did. And I think probably some aspects of the pandemic played a role in how quickly she passed. I know for me, it took a couple of months, but I eventually had a very vivid after-death communication dream about my mom. I hadn't seen her in a few years, and because she had sort of lost memory of me, so she was in New York, I'm in Arizona. There wasn't much point in us traveling back and forth to see her. It wouldn't have helped. And so I had this really profound dream experience, and I immediately woke up and wrote it down, and it's really stuck with me. It was very visual, and there were audible elements and smells, and it was really physical. It was walking in the rain and the rainforest. It was just really amazing. And as I was writing it, I was like, this isn't capturing the full experience. So I started like putting together collages of images. And then I was like, well, maybe I can, if I put this together in a different way. So I started just using the cheap, everyday accessible software that's on, the free software that came with our computer. And I put together a montage of images and text and sounds and music to sort of capture the dream experience. And what I'm getting to here is that I ended up sharing that experience, that video, with people. And this was not part of a formal research project, but just as sort of like, hey, this is something that happened to me and I would like to share it with you. And the response was really overwhelming. So many people said so many beautiful and encouraging things to me about my loss, which I found really helpful. So in that aspect, sharing it with a supportive audience was really great. And then a lot of people even thanked me for sharing it because it normalized either their dream experiences or gave them hope about a recent loss that they had had during this time of the pandemic. So it was a really powerful experience for us. And we've continued to try to collect more of these experiences now specifically. And we're trying to do this combination of presenting those experiences, not just as written text, but as more interactive videos or art pieces that people can engage with in different ways.
Because when people hear these stories, it normalizes it. And again, then they won't be scared if it happens to them. And they will be comforted by it. And to share these stories with others just propagates that, negating the stigma that usually happens with these kind of things. And I do want to point out that research has shown whether or not you have an ADC of any kind is not relevant to the nature or the strength or the quality of your relationship. Some people have them, some people don't. So don't take it as like, if you keep hearing these stories that people are having these experiences and you're not everybody's different, and your relationship continues whether you're dreaming or whether you're having these experiences or not.
Right. That your experience with your deceased may be through a different sort of ADC, or it may just be the fact that you're holding that person close to your heart, right? It doesn't need to be these overt, overly dramatic, amazing, like experiences that people have. It doesn't, those don't speak at all to the nature and quality and depth of the relationship that you had.
Thank you for that. Thank you for helping to remove the fear and also the pressure if you aren't having stunning dreams or afterlife signs, that you know, that's okay. We all process and deal with this journey through life in different ways. Thank you for that. I was thinking this would be the ideal time to play this extraordinary visual presentation of your afterlife dream, but I don't want to break the flow of the interview. So what I'm going to ask listeners to do is to listen to the interview, and then at the end, please stay on, because the video will play and you won't regret it. It's truly, truly beautiful. I've had the honor of seeing it, and I've actually watched it many times, Mark. It's beautiful, and it's a dream. You know, I'm a dream expert, so I know you can feel it yourself in the dream. I hope you do more of that. Would you do more of these videos of people sort of wrote down their afterlife dream and created it for people to have as a memory?
Yeah, that's kind of our goal right now. Is we've started a project. My mom's name is Audrey, and we've started a project called Audrey's Project, where we're collecting these stories and we're trying to turn them into videos and other forms of interactive programs like that. So yeah, we're just getting it off the ground, and we have a number of people that have already submitted stories and or experiences. And I'm excited to dig into it some more. And I don't want to make them all myself. I want to bring in outside artists and videographers and editors. But I also would encourage people to explore this on their own. If they've had these experiences and want to try to document them in different ways. You know, when you watch this video, this isn't like a cinematic tour de force, right? I just used the free software that was available. I used free open access images. I put my words to it, some music and stuff in the background. So I don't want to say anyone, but this can be accessible. People can make their own sorts of things, whether it's a simple scrapbook or even just the written story. This is accessible to most people, I think, to explore this way of expressing and sharing after-death communication experiences.
Well, it certainly feels like a visitation in a dream, a vision in a dream when you watch it. And I'm guessing if I had it done for dreams I've had about the loss of people I've loved and cared about, in that moment, you would feel that connection again, that soul connection, because you would recognize the aspects of our dream. Because the thing is, with dreams, we do forget over time. Mm-hmm. You know, they stay with us. But having it immediately after you've had that dream, to write it down and then get to work with you or someone to have it presented visually is just absolutely sublime in the healing process, because you've got something that you can go to when you feel low and you miss their presence, to feel once again that soul connection that happened in a dream and was real to you at the time. So thank you. And please, if you're listening, do stay at the end of the interview to watch this video. And I know Mark and Julie would love your feedback as well about it, and how it touched you. It certainly touched me. But we've talked a lot about afterlife dreams, of course, because this is a DreamWork Summit. But Windbridge Research Center is about so much more than dream research. Would I be correct in saying that you're most well known for your research into mediumship, Julie?
Yeah,
would that be correct now, or have you moved beyond that to the more ADCs being after death communication, to more, or is it mediumship? People who say that they are a channel to the other side.
Mediumship is actually what we call assisted ADC. So you aren't directly experiencing communication with your loved one, but the medium is, and she is conveying what she experienced to you. And so we call it assisted ADCs. What's happening, there's 4 different types of after-death communication experiences. And so assisted, what happens in a dream is what we call spontaneous, or like if you feel a sense of presence, or you smell a fragrance that is familiar, or all of the sort of sensory experiences that can be an ADC. Those are what we call spontaneous. And then mediumship is what we call assisted ADC. And then there are some things that, some clinically therapeutic things that you need a trained therapist to help you do the process. And those are called facilitated, because you need a facilitator to do them. And then there's I coined the term requested ADCs. So you are engaging in a procedure or a practice that for the purpose of receiving communication. So that's a requested ADC. So I'm interested in all four of those, but my history in my work so far has been primarily researching mediums, the accuracy of what they say, their experiences, their physiology, all sorts of things about mediums. But yeah, we are very interested in expanding that to all the four types of ADCs.
Thank you for correcting me there. I was thinking after-death communication when you said ADC, but you're saying assisted. I understand now. That's just after-death communication.
That's what it is. ADC is after-death communication, and then mediumship is assisted after-death communication. So it's
right.
And then there's requested R ADC and facilitated F ADC. Yeah.
I get it. And it's interesting with the requested, can someone incubate or ask for a dream about a departed loved one? Do you teach that to people, or do you encourage it?
Well, we're a research facility, so we're not really engaging with people other than our free educational materials that we provide. But you definitely can. In the research, having interviewed people, the research does show that people who are trying too hard, that can actually limit the capacity for communication. So, recognize that everybody's doing their best, your loved one is doing their best, and to just let these things unfold naturally. But yeah, you definitely can request that, like, hey, I'm learning about dreams. I'm going to write down all my dreams. So if you'd like to come and visit me in my dream, please do so. That you definitely can open the door.
Yeah, but don't be disappointed if it doesn't happen, because again, all these things happen on their own time, in their own way. And so sorry.
Yeah, like last night when I went to bed, I thought, well, we're doing this interview today about dreams, like maybe I can have a story to tell, but nothing happened. So
the dreaming mind, it does what it wants, doesn't it? It does. But thank you for that, for helping people not feel anxious and to force dreams. It's like a butterfly. You just got to let it land on you. You're not going to crush it. So thank you for that. But you're both being very modest, because the Windbridge Research Center is quite extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, the research you've done is often quoted in books and features, etc. Could you tell us a bit about that? The interest in from the mainstream that's growing in what you do. With TV series like Netflix Surviving Death. I know, Julie, that you've been involved with Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow, with that. What's all that been like? I mean, you are scientists first and foremost, and of course, what you do is really interesting. It's the last great adventure, isn't it? Yes. What happens when we're gone. So of course, you're going to be seized on it. So how have you found all that?
Yeah, I'm always surprised. I'm still surprised 20 years later when people ask me about me, like, how did you get involved, or what are your feelings about this? Like, I'm the scientist. What I think doesn't matter at all. It's about the data. But I get that people want to know, to question the source. I'm a big fan of questioning the source. So if you trust me, then it will be easier for you to accept that my data is real. So I get that. But yeah, there has been an increase, especially unfortunately since the pandemic. More people are having experiences of death of loved ones close to them. So they're having a lot more questions. And so that's what our mission is to try and provide these free educational materials so people can go, what does science know? What do we know about these things? And have a place to go and a safe place to land, I've heard people say.
Yeah, and it's from a more public facing sort of media perspective. It's been interesting. There has been this is a topic that's always sort of in the media's eye, right? And it sort of ebbs and flows, and it unfortunately sometimes it gets a lot of attention around when something really negative happens. So, for example, when some fraudulent medium is exposed and then ends up on the front page of the paper. And so a lot of the journalism around this is often one-sided. It can be relatively negative. That has backlash on us. It makes getting funding more difficult. It gets public support more difficult. But on the flip side of that, then there are programs like you mentioned, like Gwyneth Paltrow and this Netflix series and other programs that look at the phenomena in a little bit more balanced way and are able to present it in a more balanced way. And that does help us. But that doesn't, so for example, my inbox is kind of this crazy place, right? So 1 minute I'll get an email from someone who says, thank you, who expresses so much gratitude for the work that we do. And then people give us money, like they donate to our charity. And I literally cry when people donate money to us, because it's so humbling. And then on the flip side of that, then the hate mail comes in, right? You should give up your PhDs. I don't have a PhD, but Julie does. You should shut down. You're all frauds. Everything you do is terrible. Like it's rough. Really rough.
And that's why I applaud you both. You're very, very courageous. True pioneers and scientists. But Julie, the research that you've done into mediumship, what could you, for people again who are new to you, what would you point to the one at the moment that you feel most proud, excited of? Could you share some of that?
Well, in 2015, we published a study where under what we call quintuple blind conditions, so 5 levels of blinding. So under where we address all these explanations for where the medium could be getting her information through fraud or sensory cueing or that sort of thing. The readings took place with, it's just me and the medium on the phone, and there's no sitter. That's the living person wanting to receive the reading. We call the sitter. So the sitter is nowhere to be found. We're just on the phone. I ask specific questions about the deceased person, and then we have the person score the sitter score them, and then they also have a decoy reading. They don't know which is which. It's so complicated, so complex. And we did that with 20 mediums 58 times. And what we found was statistically significant. So that demonstrates, and you can, that's in a peer-reviewed journal article, but then we created a fact sheet on our website. In our education part of our website, we have a lot of fact sheets. So it's just like a couple pages, let's tell you what we know. And so there's a fact sheet about that accuracy testing. So that demonstrates that they're reporting specific and accurate information about the deceased. But that's as far as we can go with that sort of data, is it's about the deceased. So then we have a second research program that looks at the medium's experience of that, because they experience it as communication. So we have a paper, what's called in press. So it hasn't been published yet, but the journal has it and they have accepted it and it's on its way. And we have a paper in press, and it looked at under blinded conditions. So the medium didn't know which condition she was doing. I say she, I shouldn't, but 90% of mediums that we work with and in the US are female. So I say she, but anyone can be a medium. Anyone can have mediumistic experiences, but to be called a medium, it's that you have that experience regularly, reliably, and on demand. Okay, so the medium's under blinded conditions, they read for some people that were living and some people that were dead, and then they took they filled out an instrument afterwards, and it it quantified 26 different dimensions of consciousness. What's your memory like? What is your sense of time like? What is your sense of self? What is your altered state of consciousness? And what we found was the condition where they'd read deceased people, again, not knowing which was which, they experienced a statistically greater level of love than they did when they were reading for living people. So that directly reflects their reports of when I do a reading for a deceased person, it's like I get to talk to someone, but when I do a reading for a psychic, as I'm getting psychic information about the living, it's like boring information and I'm just like retrieving it. But when I talk to a dead person, I'm talking to a dead person. And so that under blinded conditions, this study demonstrated that what they say they're doing seems to be what they're doing, even under these controlled conditions. And the biggest change, the only change of those 26 different dimensions was love. And that's pretty incredible. That your relationship with your departed loved one is so strong, the love you feel is so strong that even mediums can feel it when they are talking, when they are being the go-between between the two of you.
Wow. And of course, this is on your website, but you've also written books. Do your books include this research?
So Julie's pretty modest about this, but she recently was awarded one of the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies after death essay awards. And so there were 200 plus people that applied, and only how many people? 29. Only 29 people won, and Julie was one of the 29 winners of an essay contest in which she was, in which the goal was to present the best evidence for the existence of an afterlife. And if you go to the BIC's website, which is on our site? Yeah,
if you go to my website, juliebphd.com, that essay is available. That you can read all 17,000 words of it.
But there's also we did an afterlife symposium last year, which is a series of short videos, 10 to 15 to 20 minutes each. And that's available at windbridge.org under our education page. And you can go through there and you can see Julie's presentation about this topic. And she talks about in more detail about accuracy and phenomenology and how that all ties together to support the idea, the hypothesis that there is an afterlife and that some form of consciousness survives after the physical death of the body. I also want to throw in one other really important area of research that we do, which is our clinical work regarding bereavement and mediumship. So we call it the BAM research, or bereavement and mediumship research. And it's this idea that mediumship could be used as a potential therapeutic intervention for the alleviation of traumatic grief. And so we're working with various clinicians on different projects relating to that.
Yeah, we'd love to do, that's the most important question, and we'd love to do more research on it, but the funding for this area in general, doing mediumship research, is so limited, and what exists is not interested in these clinical aspects. So we're trying to do what we can. I work with a clinician, and she developed an instrument where that therapists can use, because they're not trained in this. Therapists receive training in religion and spirituality as an important part of health and mental health, but these afterlife topics are not addressed in their training. So she developed this instrument that helps clinicians know how to address this and what kind of things they can bring to the table with their clients. And so that we put that in a peer-reviewed journal article, and that's available on our website too. The clinician's name is Beth Christopherson that I work with.
Thank you. I love the idea also, what you are pushing towards and your work is contributing towards, to maybe one day having therapists trained in afterlife communication and dream work and how it can help and heal people. Because, I know, because I get anecdotal reports of how, having a dream or an afterlife sign or visiting a medium has really helped them move forward. It doesn't stick them in their grief, which is such a myth. And you two are doing so much to explode that. So thank you so much. But you also, do you have a program within Windbridge where mediums are tested? Because I do read sometimes in the back of book covers that have shot up the charts, Windbridge endorsed medium.
can I?
Is that something that you do, that somebody's had, Mark, if somebody's had testing? Because as I say, there's some books that fly up the charts, you know, New York Times or whatever, and then you can see that it's written by a Windbridge endorsed medium. That's you two behind that.
So the way that works is, so when we first started the Windbridge Institute back in 2008, in order to do our research, we wanted to make sure that we had a group of pre-screened, pre-certified research participants that we knew could perform the functions that we needed them to do in research, who were reliable, could communicate, follow protocol, and had a grounding in research that we could teach them. And so we put out a call, and hundreds of mediums applied or told us that they were interested in go through our certification and training process, which is called a Windbridge Certified Research Medium. And we move through this, and so the process took months to complete, and after successful completion, which included things like scientifically controlled research readings and scoring and things that mediums won't normally do in the field, they also have to donate time back to the center to participate in research. And when a lot of mediums knew what all the rules were and the criteria, many of them self-selected out of the process. So the ones that stuck with it were sort of the ones that were the most competent, felt the most assured, felt comfortable working in a research setting. And so we went through and we systematically tested all those mediums, and we ended up with an initial pool of about 20 what we call Windbridge certified research mediums. And then after we achieved this pool, the funding for the program ended. We didn't really need any more pre-screened research participants. So the program is closed and we no longer do that. And so you will see a number of these mediums out in the world who are truly Windbridge certified research mediums.
Does that mean that they've achieved a level of accuracy for proof of survival beyond chance?
Yeah, there was a sort of a bar, and to become a Windbridge certified research medium, you had to achieve these accuracy scores. And they went through interviews and they took tests and they did all kinds of things. And this pool of 20 that we had, a couple have retired now and one's anonymous, but the other 17 are listed on our website. They are scientifically minded. So I've heard them say things like, I'm interested in the answers to these questions as much as you are. Like, they're scientifically minded and they want to know what's happening to them. And, you know, they thought they were crazy, some of them, when it started happening, and they want to know what we're learning. And it's a great group of people because they're excited about research, and they understand that the controls that we have to do, and they participate in protocol design with me too. So I say, hey, can you do this? And they go, I can't do that, but maybe I could do it like this. I go, oh yeah, that'll still answer the question. So they're part of research all the way through the process. Fascinating.
Oh my goodness. There's so much to talk about with you two. I mean, we started with dreams, but there's just like so many summits here. It's just, I'm getting so excited. But Mark, I can't let the interview end because you are such a genius with technology, and thank you for your help with the Premonition Code website with my co-author Dr. Mossbridge, you know, the precognitive dreaming, which you designed. It's absolutely brilliant. But I'm just going to ask you about the question about digital afterlife now. It's slightly off topic, but it's something that really interests me in the way that we don't really ever die, really, because we leave a digital imprint now, don't we?
That's a really interesting area, and it has more to do with technology and technology ethics than I think for us in terms of studying the nature of consciousness. Now, there are various forms of technology that people have tried to employ to help facilitate communication with the deceased. It's an area of research known as instrumental transcommunication, or ITC. A very popular version of that is called EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. People try to record voices of the deceased on various types of equipment. And it's we've done some studies and we've published some papers in this area, and it's a very difficult area to study systematically. There's a lot of potential confounds. The technology can be difficult, but yes, this existence of digital self after the death of the body is really sort of changing the way. But these are simulations of consciousness for the most part, right? These aren't actual people's consciousnesses saved in computers and then reproduce, like interacting with you. They're artificial intelligence systems that are put together through the collection of people's memories and social media contacts and emails and things like that. So I, while fascinating, I think it's kind of a different domain than what we're studying specifically at the Windbridge Research Center. But as a technologist and a technology ethicist, I think that's a really important and interesting area. And I'd like to get more involved in that.
Infinite possibilities. And just as we draw the interview to a close, is there a tip that you can share with our listeners about, meeting departed loved ones in their dreams, or some insight you can give, something for them to take away from this interview?
I think just have realistic expectations. It may or may not happen, but your relationship continues. And so let it unfold naturally. We have one of our mediums on our team in talking about receiving communication. She says, you're looking for fireworks when you should be looking for fireflies. Like it may not be, I mean, these dream ADCs are very different, very vivid, very different than regular dreams, but after death communication, like a butterfly is not amazing, right? It's a butterfly. So expect the expectable. These things are normal and natural, and they're not going to blow your mind, maybe.
And I would add one more piece to that, which is, while there could be a lot of benefit in sharing your experience, and you may want to share your experiences, but take criticism or feedback of those experiences with a grain of salt, or don't let anyone tell you how you should feel about your experience.
Yeah.
Like if you say, oh, I had this dream, and someone goes, oh, you're hallucinating, or you're just making that up, or what, if it was important and relevant to you, that's the thing that matters most. Because there are so many reasons why people reject the afterlife or can't accept the afterlife or have fear of the afterlife. And that's those people's process, not your process.
Yeah, and even science, no one can prove that your deceased person visited you in dream, but no one can prove they didn't. And so you have to remember that.
You are absolutely right. Oh, it's been absolutely joyful and fascinating and informative, illuminating. So many words I want to use to describe it, but thank you so much for the work you do, for all you are and do. Please, if you're listening, do stay and listen and watch Mark's dream. It's amazing. You've got to do that. And there's that quote, isn't it? Life is but a dream. And would you say death is like waking from a dream? Do you think that would be, obviously you haven't been to the other side, but would you think that would be accurate to say?
Well, it's dreaming, right, is an altered state of consciousness that we all engage in regularly. And death is probably an altered state of consciousness, right? You just don't have a body anymore, but you're still you, and you still love people, and you still want to learn and have experiences. So yeah, I'd say it isn't like a dream.
Like a dream. A dream is an adventure, and they always say death is the next great adventure. Where can people find out about you before we end? What's the best entry place, the portal to your universe?
So the Windbridge Research Center website is windbridge.org, and you can have access to all our free educational materials. You can learn more about me personally and on my personal website, juliebphd.com.
Also, if you go to the Windbridge site, I'd encourage you to sign up to our email list. We send out an email about once a month with new research opportunities, publications, events, those kinds of things. And again, we really want to stress that all of our educational materials are free and open access to anyone who wants to get to them. It's very important to us that material stays outside of a paywall.
Thank you. Could you just repeat that website again?
So www.windbridge.org.
Thank you so much. And please stay tuned, everyone, for Mark's video. Thank you again, you two.